Hello. As you can see from the fact that I did not pause, I have transcended being a millennial. I am now Gen Z. Now, I was actually thinking about doing this video under there, like over there, next to the mower, because I'm kind of like, the country version of Ty Lopez. You know, it's gonna be like here under my shed, you know, with my mower, because I'm always talking about reading. Okay, anyways, no, I was gonna talk today about, what was I going to talk about? I don't know, but here's what I am talking about. I'm talking about how to force your kids to study, okay? Because I know that's what's on everybody's mind. How can I force my kids to study, right? But unfortunately, I can't tell you that because I don't know. But I can talk to you about how to support your kids to want to study things, which is a whole different thing. Because the kids have been playing so much chess lately, I'm getting recommended like chess videos on my thing because we watch a video or whatever, and then it recommends more. You ever heard of this algorithm thing? It's crazy. It actually recommends things to you. I don't know if you ever heard of that, but there was this documentary done on I think it was specific. I don't know if it was about Chess Genius or what. I don't remember. But they talked about the Polgar sisters, and the Polgar sisters were these two sisters that were raised by their parents, and from the beginning, their parents were like, before they even had the kids, or maybe when they were gonna have kids, they were like, the dad was like, we're gonna raise geniuses. He had this theory, we're gonna raise geniuses, and they ended up being really good at chess. Like, I think one of them was the first grandmaster as a woman, and because there's titles that are specific for women, but she was actually like a legit grandmaster, like equal to a men's grandmaster. I think that's the part of the story. But anyways, and they were talking about this criticism about, you know, did these people force these kids to study chess and everything, right? And you know, you shouldn't force your kids to do all that stuff. And I was just thinking about that because I was coming out of we have a little office here at the ranch, and the kids are in there right now, so they have computer time between certain hours of the day, and as soon as it's computer time, bam, they're in there, and they've been playing chess like it's none of your business. It's no one's business how much they've been playing chess, but I'm telling you about it, so it is your business. But I'm saying like no one's business. That's the phrase I was looking for. And they've just been playing chess nonstop, and like I don't play that often. That's my excuse as to why I'm not that great. But no, like I'm getting a lot better, actually, to be honest. I'm getting a lot better in the limited time that I do play, but I'm not sitting around studying it all the time. But I did start seeing a lot of improvement when I put the vocabulary through my Techno Tutor, which is pretty cool. The kids have done all that. They've put all the vocabulary through, and they've been studying chess videos, tutorials, books. Like we have books on chess theory, chess puzzles, you know, and like if I'm sitting there playing a little chess match, I like to play the 10-minute matches because it's like a limited amount of time. You have to think quick, and like, you know, I don't have time to sit around playing chess all day. And so I learn a lot from those. And if the kids see me like on my phone sitting down, they know I'm probably playing chess. So they come over there, they're like, oh, what'd you do? Oh, you shouldn't have moved that there. You should have done, oh, why'd you do that? Oh, no, hey, don't do that, move here. I'm like, why? Because then he's gonna do this and you're gonna do that. And I'm like, okay, and then I do it, and I'm like, holy shit, they were right. And I'm saying that because it's like, when you understand the vocabulary point clearly, and when I say the vocabulary point, you can't just go, okay, I'm going to go teach my kids vocabulary. I'm saying you have to use Techno Tutor. There's no other way around it. So you have to understand, when I say vocabulary and Techno Tutor, they're like the same, okay? It's kind of like if you were like, can I think of an analogy? I don't know. I was trying to think of some analogy of like some other technology, but it's like, when you think long distance communication, what do you think? Do you think telegraph? Do you think like Morse code, smoke signals? No, you're like internet, you know, or telephone, but essentially the same thing, right? Especially now. So it's like, when I'm saying vocabulary, I don't mean any other old fucking archaic way. I mean Techno Tutor. Integrate the words physically, right? It's a special thing. Anyways, so they've done all that, and sometimes I go off on these tangents and then I forget where I was at. They call that divergent thinking, but I think that's just so you can feel special about yourself. which is not the same as neurodivergence, okay? Anyways, it's cool because with the kids, and it's like, I can say this in a video and you can watch it and you either believe me or you don't believe me, but it's a different thing when you experience the reality of it. We don't force our kids to do stuff. We don't punish them. We don't use any of those methods. And yet they do stuff that you can't even get kids to do with punishments and with force, except in rare cases, right? And our kids are smarter than any other kids you've ever met. I mean, they're both, and I say both because we have 3 kids, but our youngest is still at the pre-verbal stage, basically. I mean, he's verbal, but you know what I mean? He's not like, reading books and demonstrating it yet, right? You'll see that too, eventually. But he's already on track at the same speed of his age where our kids were at when they were his age. So, with the older 2 kids, Seneca's 5, she just turned 5, and Max will be 7 tomorrow as of my recording this. So 5 and 7, and I mean, they're both in there playing chess. Seneca's playing 4-player chess, and Max is, I don't know what he is, playing some kind of chess. They've been playing chess like a lot, any chance we give them. I mean, like, we're not like having to take chess away, like, so they'll do some other things. Like, if they're in the house where there's no computers, they might be reading a chess book, but they can read those at night. They might they'll read something else. Like Max has been reading Mossflower for like the 15th time, and he's like, I can't stop reading this. I love this book so much, right? For like the Redwall series. And Seneca has her dolls that she plays with, and there's all kinds of things that we do. We have animals that we take care of, cows and stuff like that, and chickens, and we play, and the kids have swings, and they're normal kids, but they are studying chess as if they want to become really good at chess. And Max is getting really good. He beat me for the first time, legitimately beat me. Because in the past, like, I might tell the kids, hey, do this, and kind of give them some recommendations, and they might do really well or whatever. But this was like, I'm really like trying to beat him. And for the first time, he beat me the other day, a couple days ago, I think it was. And he even told me, I think I talked about this in the podcast, this that we recorded on Sunday, but he even told me at one point, he did something, he had his queen, was going to come in, it was going to be protected by the bishop, and he was like, he moved the queen in to get it into that next point, checkmate, and he was like, you can't avoid checkmate, you can't avoid checkmate. And I'm like, what do you mean I can't avoid checkmate? And I wasn't even looking at it until he said that, because I had my own plan I was trying to do, and he was like, Funmaster Mike says you can't avoid checkmate. It was like some tutorial he'd been watching where he's like taking these lessons and applying them, right? And I looked at the situation, and then I took the bishop, and he was like, oh, because he didn't see that I could do that. But if he hadn't told me that, the thing is, if he hadn't said anything and he had moved the queen, me taking the bishop wouldn't have changed anything, because it would be the queen that was checking me. But in this point, because I was able to get the bishop before he checked me with the queen, then, because in that scenario, if he'd already checked me with the queen, taking the bishop wouldn't change anything, because I'm still in check, right? For those of you who understand chess. So, but because he had told me, I was like, oh, let me take the bishop. And then he was like, oh, so it's like that plan was ruined. But then he still ended up winning. So even after he told me, his basically like kind of alerted me to what was gonna, he didn't tell me what was gonna happen, but I kind of saw like, oh, but I was not, so I'm saying he could have beat me sooner if he hadn't told me, but even him telling me, he still beat me. So that was pretty cool. And I was like, and I always make these predictions where I'm like, oh, one day, like I remember when I was like, a couple of years ago, and I was like, eventually Max will be doing his Technotutor all on his own, not with Katie or something. He'll be doing it himself. Like when he's 9 or 10 or something, he'll be going back through everything himself, to like double check everything. Started doing that when he was 4. And now he's on level 5, which is like 5th grade, right? So it's like the same thing. I'm like, one day Max will be able to beat me. And it's like, then like a couple days later he beats me. I'm like, oh shit, okay. But it's like, I can see them applying all the lessons. Like I had to teach him, like, don't explain everything you're doing. I mean, because especially if you're actually wanting me to beat you. Like if we're just casual, like we don't care who wins kind of thing, and you want to tell me what you're doing, that's fine. But if you're really wanting me to see if like you can beat me, don't tell me what you're doing. And and we were talking about the point of like, when you keep something secret, what's the context in which that makes sense versus when it doesn't make sense, or when is it not best. But in this context, you're both agreeing to play a game. It makes sense to keep your strategy secret, right? Unless you're bluffing or something, and there's technique there too, I'm sure. But you know, he's like, so in the moments where he does tell me what he's doing and everything, I'm like, wow. And then like I'll play online, and you know, I'm not asking for his advice, but he'll be like, hey, you should do that. And I'm like, why would I do that? And he's like, just trust me, I'll explain. So then I do it, and then he shows me, and I'm like, wow. Like, so yesterday, there was this point that came up where it was like this guy had a pawn here, and he was like, put your bishop here, because then that pawn can't advance anymore. It was like blockading them. And I had only ever thought to do that with other pawns. So I was like, that's a really cool technique. So I took that on, and then I started using it later, and I started winning some games because I was able to, you know, I had more tools at my disposal. And he taught me that, you know? So that was just so cool. And so what I'm trying to say is, you know, people always ask the how, and it's like, we don't have to figure out how to get our kids to study. We just give them the vocabulary with TechnoTutor, and then they want to study stuff. You know, like, have you ever sat with a 5 and 7-year-old and watched a 30-minute long video on how a carburetor works? My kids will do that. And we're watching the video, and the guy's talking about the 4-stroke cycle. You know, you have the power stroke, you have the intake, and then you have the combustion and the power stroke, and then the you have the exhaust. Like, there's this whole 4-cycle thing, right? And Max is like, oh, or no, what was it? Okay, so we're watching the video about the carburetor, and the guy mentions, you know, the 4-stroke cycle, and Max says, oh yeah, I know about that, and he starts telling me about it because he's watched videos on how does a 4-stroke engine or 4-cycle engine work, right? So my point is, so here's what I'm getting at. When you have the vocabulary, things become interesting. Like, Max can pick up a high-level science fiction book, like one that I would read, and he'll just start reading it. He loves to like pick up books and just read the back of it. Like, what's this about? What's this about? You know, like I was joking about with somebody the other day. I'm like, you could leave a receipt laying around, and if the kids see it, they'll pick it up and read it, because it's just like reading is so effortless to them. It's physically integrated. You know, it's like, you know what it's like? It's, if you ever seen the movie Karate Kid, the old school one, and I'm saying that because I don't know about the newer with Will Pinkett Smith's kid, whatever his name is, Jaden. If you've seen the original one with Mr. Miyagi and, you know, what's that kid's name? It's like some Italian name or something. Anyways, I remember like there's this part where he's making him sweep the floor and wax the car and all this stuff, and it only becomes apparent later why he was doing those things, because then suddenly he starts fighting him, and the kid's like doing all the moves like automatically because he had done it so much. Okay, it was just cutting out for a second. And it's like that. It's not the same because you don't have to do it over and over or something, but it's the same idea of like, when you have the words physically integrated properly, and then you go to read, it just is like this effortless thing that happens. It's like a computer. The computer's not struggling to read something. The only time it will is if it doesn't have that programming in it. Because if it doesn't have that program, that's why you're always updating your computer, giving it new information of how to process and handle other types of information. That's just one reason why you update it. And so a faster computer has more connections. It's like it has higher vocabulary. And that's what all the words are that you learn. And the way you build a new computer is you put more physical connections. And so that's what TechnoTutor is doing. Without explaining the mechanics of how it works, that's the essence of what it's doing. And so with our kids, we don't have to force them to study stuff. Like Max and Seneca will study chemistry. They'll study things that you would think most 5 and 7-year-olds would find very mundane and boring and uninteresting. They will find it fascinating simply because when you have the vocabulary, you can see finer detail and stuff. You can see you know, like that carburetor thing. I was just blown away about how a carburetor actually works. And the only reason I was interested was because we were trying to work on this little ATV, and yeah, I could go get somebody else to fix it and pay for it, but I was like, I want to try to fix it myself, and maybe it's a simple thing. So I had to take this carburetor apart and figure out all the parts, and I'm like, I don't understand what this thing is. So then I'm doing my TechnoTutor, make a list, put all the vocabulary in, integrate it, watch some videos, and I'm like, oh, I understand what a carburetor is. Now I'm thinking the carburetor is not the issue, because it seems like everything is fine. And I mean, it could be like the parts themselves, they're just shitty parts because they got them from China or something. I don't know, because it's a Yamaha engine, and I don't know. I don't know if it'd be hard to tell if that was the issue. But I'm thinking now maybe it's a spark plug. I just realized that the other day because I'm like, okay, it's not even turning over or anything or trying to turn over. Maybe it's a spark plug. So I'm going to check that out. And what is a spark plug? How does that work? How do you replace it? You know, it's like building my vocabulary. So the kids see me doing that, and they see Katie, you know, like learning new things, doing things you couldn't do before. Like she makes all the bread, just as one example. And it's like so good. And I'm not just saying that because I see she's watching. But it's so good, and it gets better every time, and she tries new things, and sometimes it's like not that good, and it's like, and she's like, oh fuck, I forgot to put salt, you know, and it's like, but then she figured something out, and then now she's putting other things in, and it tastes so good, and we don't have to buy shitty bread with preservatives in it and stuff. But my point is the kids get to see us doing stuff like that, learning, expanding ourselves. I really can't wrap my mind around, I mean, I can, it's just, I know when I imagine it, it's still limited. But like what their kids will get to see of them, you know, because their kids will see them already at a much higher level than Katie and I are at, you know, and that'll be really cool because when they're my age, they'll be so much more advanced. It's not even funny. So I guess my point with my clickbait title is you can't force your kids. I mean, maybe you can. I don't know. I don't know how to force kids to study stuff. Even I was a tutor for a long time, and I was pretty good. I got paid a lot of money to do that. You know, hourly. My hourly wage was really high. Is what I mean. And, you know, higher than any other tutor in Houston that I was aware of. And yet, couldn't force kids to do it if they didn't want to do it. And why didn't they want to do it? Why isn't chemistry just fascinating? Like the exact same stuff a high schooler will study, Max, or supposed to study and doesn't want to, Max will do it just for fun without being asked to. So like, there's no homeschooling here. Which is not to say the kids aren't highly educated. It's just the idea of homeschooling is like you're trying to follow some school curriculum. And our kids are way beyond that. Like Max will learn what a high school student will learn in months. He'll learn it within a few days or a week. And then he'll be like, all right, cool, next. And he'll go on to something else. Right? And now they're playing chess and Max is like, oh, next week they're doing an event on chesskid.com or whatever where you can play a 12-year-old international master. I can't wait. And he's got it on his calendar and everything, right? He's like ready to try to play this kid, you know? I'm like, damn, like, imagine the confidence of that, you know? Like, I don't even think he wonders if he's going to win or lose. He's just like, I want to play them. I want to do it. Like, I want to play this person who's like, you know, it's like you've been practicing karate for a few months and then you're like, oh, there's a black belt coming to town. I want to try to fight him and see what happens. And like, if I can beat him, you know, like that's Max. Like, that's the level of confidence. And you can't force that. When you're confident, you want to do new things. It's interesting. It's fun. And that's what life is. Life is like, you want to experience new things, understand, like expand. And, you know, people talk so much shit about school and hey, by all means, school, talk shit about it. But it really is the parents' responsibility. Without the tools, they can't take the responsibility. It'd be like if I said, it's your responsibility to cut down all these trees in this forest, but like you literally don't even have an axe or a chainsaw or anything. It's like, okay, well, you could say that, but I can't fucking do anything about it. But suddenly I give you a chainsaw and teach you how to use it. You're like, all right, got it. You know, like I must have saved thousands of dollars. Definitely have saved thousands of dollars by removing trees myself with a chainsaw that I had to learn how to do. I mean, I didn't even know how to use a chainsaw before we moved out here. And now I've cut down like so many trees. So we have firewood constantly. When a tree is in the way of something or whatever the circumstance, I can cut it down. If a bunch of branches break, I'm like, I need to get rid of that tree, you know? So like, being able to learn new things, that's like, you're alive, you know, and it's fun. And you lose that, you know, whatever was left in you by the time you get to school, it gets destroyed, beaten out of you out of school. And yeah, I'm not saying there's like 0.001% of people who still retain that, but it's like they were probably studying stuff outside of school anyways. Like, you know, you read, Richard Feynman's autobiography. I read that with Max when he was like 4 years old. It's really good. And he explained how, you know, when he was a kid in his room, like catching his like trash can on fire because he's like working on radios and stuff, you know, and like he became like the local radio repair kid because people didn't know how to repair their own radios, and he'd figure it out. He was able to figure that out. And you know, he's like a famous quantum physicist. He's dead now, but and he talks about in his autobiography about you know, when he went to school as a young kid and he already knew all the math stuff. And because he had the math books and he was teaching it himself to it, and he liked being in school from the perspective of, You know, getting to see other ways to do it. Of course, it's not to say I like think the school system was so great back then in the, I don't know, when he went to school, 20s, 30s, I'm not even sure. Maybe it was better, maybe it wasn't. It's kind of irrelevant. The point is, he was like, yeah, I got to see other ways of solving the problem. It probably was better in some sense, but less kids, less dumbed down people. The teachers were probably more highly educated back then. Now it's just like this mass production system of like just, you know, it's like, think about a car from like the 1950s or like something like that, how well it was built. And yeah, I'm sure like, you know, you can do like crumple tests and stuff and they're safer now or something like, well, maybe a car's not a good example because I don't know if they're well built now or not. But a table, like, you know, you go look at an antique piece of furniture and like how well constructed it is and everything versus, you know, some mass produced like Amazon thing that you're just gonna end up throwing away in a year. There's a big difference. So it's kind of like that with the school system too. We can't go back to the way it was. We have to move forward with new tools, and that's the great thing about it. You know, you might think that telephones were more well constructed before, but you don't want to use an old phone. You want the iPhone. You just want it better constructed, right? So you want the new technology. You just want the principle behind it to be what is actually best for you, right? So that's my 2 cents on how to force your kids to learn and study, and how we do it with our kids. And I mean, the results are night and day from what you get. It's a total 180 to the current education system or school system. So that's all. Leave a comment if you want to say something, or share the video if you can. And that's all for now.